Got a green light. Please. And we can begin whenever you are ready.
Just looking at you, Mr. Chair.
I guess I have to call this meeting to order.
Thank you.
And I guess we need a formal motion for approval of the agenda.
Make a motion, we approve the July 24th, 2024 agenda.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I make a
Election of
motion-
officers.
I was just gonna go there. Make a motion, we have Tom be the chairman. Doug, the chairman.
Oh, I was liking your first motion better.
Excuse me,
I'll
Nick,
second that.
Nick, can you specify which Tom? Because actually Tom Hoops is also on this committee. So if you're gonna pick Tom Divney, but can you just specify Tom Divney?
Oh, now it's really difficult for.
Now it's really difficult.
No, you know,
Doug, what's your last name?
Brown.
I make a motion, we nominate Doug Brown as chairman.
I'll second that motion.
oh, I thought you said Tom. I'm sorry.
Originally, yes.
Oh,
I did.
okay.
Mistake.
Tom, do you want to be chairman?
I do not. I decline the offer.
I'll second.
Fine, I'll accept it. All those in favor of the,
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
how many meetings a year?
It's only seasonal.
Yeah.
Could
Do we need a vice
nominate a
chair?
vice chair too, please.
I'll make a motion that we nominate Tom as vice chair, Tom Devaney.
I'm gonna second that.
All those in favor of Todd Devaney as the vice chair,
Aye.
the motion passes.
You're a good man.
Okay, new
Can't go to
business. Review and discuss the memo dated July 23rd, 2024 from Jessica, town planner, potential zoning amendments for 2020. Jessica, the floor is yours.
Okay. All right, so the memo before you includes things that have been brought to our attention throughout the year. This is a compilation of both planning and building departments. Usually come up with this list. The first item on the list, and what we usually do every year, is we go over the 2024 ballot and see what amendments passed, what amendments didn't pass, and whether or not there are some that didn't pass, if we want to revamp them, amend them further, and put them back on the ballot again. So that's the first task. The flexible zoning subdivision, I think, is the only one that didn't pass. That was one that was pretty long and lengthy. We had done a lot of work on that.
Can you help me, Jessica, remind me what that one was for? Was that for the being able to stick a RDU in your backyard?
So that's it was a flexible subdivision only allowed in the residential rural and the rural zones. And that would allow flexibility on, frontage, density, things like that.
12
It had,
units and 6 buildings.
right, we had the, a cap on the size of house that you could build, things like that. So that way that would allow a way to have, some starter homes in town, as starter as they could get,
But it also is a way to allow on a 5-acre lot, 12 units, 6 buildings.
Right, you could have multiple individual homes and sort of preserving the backland.
And that was
and some type of
allowing
conservation.
the homeowners to own only the home itself, not the land that it's on, correct?
Right, it would
Okay,
become.
that's what I thought.
Yeah,
A co-op, I think. is-
in a way, right, it would become, an association.
So I mean, and I guess that's a question. I mean, there would have to be a formal,
Yes.
which opens in a whole nother can of worms, frankly.
I'll start the discussion on what if we were okay with the fact that it got voted down, what would be our next action here?
So you could. I mean, I kind of suggest maybe going through the entire list as well, because you wanna keep in mind, you don't want to have too many warrant articles written. So historically, it's been like 8 to 10 on a whole. So from here, it would have helped if I gave you the actual ordinance from last year, but it didn't. So I don't know if you guys even want to get real deep into discussion on that, or if you kind of want to put that as a placeholder, go through the rest of this.
We could review it before the next meeting. Be better.
Yeah, because
Prepared.
we'll have, the next meeting, if you guys choose, hey, we'd like to revisit this again, I'll have it prepared for you so you can see what the language is.
Can I make a motion or what, I don't know, maybe it's different than a motion, just a request of the group here. After having gone through that, is anybody in favor of continuing discussion on this or just allowing it?
Are you talking specifically about the one,
The one that
the
didn't
zoning
pass.
amendment?
Yes. The
Yep,
zoning amendment
flex-
for
yeah,
the
flexible,
Flexibles.
Yep.
What do you mean? You just want to put it on this year's ballot the same way?
No, I said
No,
to
it-
vote
it
it down.
says-
Oh, remove it. Oh, I'm
You don't wanna
sorry.
bother.
Right.
Sorry.
Saying to let it die.
I misunderstood.
That's what I'm saying, yes.
I mean, I guess my question was gonna be, did anyone in the town formally, raise issue with, what happened on that?
a lot of people didn't like that it was flexible.
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest concern that I heard. So the votes were 403 yes and 495 no.
Oh.
So, either you either liked it or you didn't.
Yep.
More or less.
I think if we wanted to reopen it, we have to do a better job of explaining it.
Yep,
Because I think what I picked up from Facebook, a lot of people didn't understand it.
yep,
And the other thing is, as soon as you mention low income, I think what you said before was a better term, starter home.
yep.
As soon as you mention low income, everybody panics.
Well, normal income needs affordable housing.
Right, I agree with that.
Right.
I'm for it. I'm
So
just
we
saying
took
that
the word low
these
out
are
of
things
Yeah.
I picked up from like
Right.
what reading Facebook and
Right.
In the discussions I sat in on this one, though, I'm not sure any of this becomes affordable housing or low income housing or housing. Because what we were saying is you go in there, you can build a house up to, I forget the square.
1,200.
1,200 square feet.
They could stick another house, another apartment on top of it that was 800 square feet or something.
Yeah, whatever that percentage is, your ADU, above a garage.
And you basically have to be kind of a builder to do this because you need to own a piece of property that's at least 5 acres. And it didn't sound like anybody would do it anyhow.
I mean, you could have the possibility of building the ADU. It doesn't mean that, that would be built along with the house and you have to buy all of it. It's giving that property owner the option. That you could,
Units.
yeah, that you could put, an apartment above a garage.
Well,
I mean,
that
that's
is
by
how
right.
we wrote it. Right, that you could put another apartment.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that,
square
right.
feet.
I mean, that's,
Again, actually, we all sat through this probably. I know we did a lot of discussion around this.
right. We even hired a consultant.
We hired a consultant and
Yeah.
my take on it is, I'm not sure we came up with the best idea to solve, the affordability of housing.
Are there other avenues to go with other than this particular, the way that this is done? Is there
I mean,
another way?
what you guys could do is take what was written and, review it again. Tweak some things that you feel might need to be tweaked and that
Did you see
maybe.
anything? Did you specifically see anything in here that you thought might, if we adjusted it the right way, may, be more enticing to the voters?
I would have
vote
to,
for it?
I'd have to really look at it again before I'd like to comment on that.
has
Just
this
so-
concept worked in other communities?
Like, what's the likelihood that it would actually be?
Yes. You know,
Funds
a
will
builder,
build
yeah, you know, a
proposed.
builder, I think Mark kind of hit on it. The builder's even interested.
Right. That's a good question. I know there was one developer that I talked to
Okay.
a lot prior to this.
It's cluster housing.
Yeah, we're
Right,
not allowed to
but
use.
what it does is allows a couple of things, right? It allows you to stick one more unit, or actually two more units, one more building. Than what you could have been allowed to do
Mhm.
before. And it allows you to stick the second units on each of the six, at least on a 5 acre lot, each of the six buildings. If it's a bigger lot, you could do more. I mean, the people I talked to looked at this, it says cluster housing. And I think it might have been Scott Williams, but I forget who it was, so don't hold me to it. But someone mentioned to me, we've tried to get cluster housing approved here 4 or 5 times and it's failed every time.
That's.
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the sentiment
cluster housing
clearly
on the
is in
Yale
favor of not approving this, you know, and the question is who's driving this, you know, what is it, you know, what's the real sentiment in the town about this?
Well, isn't the second question could be that it got voted down? What should we do next? And was one of those options probably to me would seem like avoid it.
You
Skip.
could just
Let
just
it
let
die.
it die.
Let it die.
And then
Well-
it just is what it is, or, you know, or looking at the number of votes, you know, I don't know. I don't know what you.
Is
what you
is
base
it
on.
possible to retain the information and save it and skip a year if it's something that we all discuss and we don't want to put it on the ballot this year? Is it-
Absolutely.
It's possible to keep it though and use it for the following year?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep,
I
you have
have
options.
reservation just about the physical size of these buildings. I mean, at 1,200 square feet, we're not talking about much of a house, frankly. And then it allows for even an 800, like you're saying, an apartment over a garage.
Basically a
Like,
studio.
I mean,
Yeah,
we're
one
talking
bedroom
about
maybe.
multifamily apartments almost at some level, you know. I'm just, you know, whether the people in the town want this is the question for me.
Well,
The people, we know that they don't want this the way it is.
Yep.
In this particular instance, if something, I just maybe a stupid question. Something like this were to get approved, what is the likelihood of the developer or whoever owns the property being able to use it as like a Section 8 facility? Are they allowed to do that? If this were to go through and somebody did something like this, is there something that would stop them from having it that way? Like, do they have to go through an approval process for that, or could this fall under those guidelines?
What's a
So-
section 8?
Huh?
What's a section?
Low
8?
income, I'm sorry.
So we do have an ordinance already. It's called inclusionary zoning. And that's strictly set up for, you know, your traditional, like, sort of lower income. So, you know, a particular percentage of people have to be of a, you know, specific in that kind of thing. That's a different ordinance.
Okay.
How is that used? I'm curious.
So that was put in place. The state had required it back in 2012 for towns to put some type of, you know, low income type ordinance in place. And not one developer has taken advantage of that ordinance.
Because Section 8, you could put.
So that's
in
12
every-
years. It's been in place and it hasn't been used.
Right, but Section 8, you could have a Section 8 renter anywhere.
Yeah, that could be, right. Section 8 is a little different. That's just on how
It's whether or
the,
not the owner.
right, the owner's getting the
Section
money.
8, that's
Yeah.
right.
I just meant
Yeah.
as far as, you know, if you get somebody with a substantial amount of land, puts a bunch of these homes together and now it's all encompassed all together. I just didn't know if that was possible.
Yeah,
in
that
this-
would be a different, that would be a different ordinance they would apply under.
So these could be owned or rented.
Yep.
You could own it and rent it, so you don't have any control over who occupies it,
Right.
really.
Yep.
That wasn't really, I knew that. I was just asking as far as what it
Yeah.
was.
I'll make a motion that we table this for a while since it was voted down or voted against. Even though it was only, whatever, 59% to 41%.
Yep, right.
I'd make a motion that we table this and let it sit, bring it up next year. Revisit it.
In 2025.
Revisit whenever, but revisit it down the road.
Anyone second that?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion
Okay.
carries.
And like, well, I guess it's done. One more comment on the key to this supposedly for the developer was it was allowing you to stick one more unit for every 5 acres than you could have without it.
Yep.
But it's what it is.
Plus then, you know, ultimately, who's the manager of the homeowner association? How does that get established?
Yeah.
There's a lot of can of
There's
worms.
a lot of moving parts to
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, we can certainly, take a look at that again.
I think it's something that's obviously necessital to the town. I agree. It's something we're gonna have to look at in the future.
You'd almost
Affordable
need like
housing issue.
Oh,
an
yeah, the
agency
affordable housing issue, yeah.
to be the driver, like the ones on, off of Old Wolfboro.
Oh, yep,
Senior Center.
yep.
So what's the sentiment? Do we want to table the balance of these to go through at the next meeting or that didn't pass?
So
Like,
that was just that one that didn't pass.
that was it,
Everything
huh?
else, yep,
Yeah,
everything
I
else
was gonna say, 'cause
passed.
There aren't too many.
Right. Yep,
That was the only one.
that's the only one.
Okay.
All right. So that's that. So did my best in trying to consolidate some of these issues. So number 2 on this memo. I tried to just list, things that had to do with definitions or the table of uses. So over time, we're realizing, we do not have a definition for boathouse. A cupola. There are references in the zoning ordinance about, debris or litter or trash.
Or junk or-
Yeah, it was junk. So that may need to be defined. Potentially a fence. Footprint is not defined. Front yard. In kind, and then junk. So beside that, I've listed the areas in the zoning ordinance that talks about these words, but they're not defined.
Yeah, we don't have cottage or cabin.
Mm-hmm.
Those are often on the tax card, it'll say 1921 cabin.
Are we gonna add those to the definitions on the bottom?
Right, so we have seasonal cabin.
Side, yeah.
Which two did you say, Norma?
I said cabin and cottage. We have seasonal.
Yeah, there's
cottage.
there's only seasonal cabin, so that might need further looking at.
I'm curious, why'd you leave them off the list? Like, we have a list here of the stuff you want. Why did you leave cabin and cottage off the list?
Because these are just all my little notes on my.
Right,
Oh,
'cause I was going through her
Gotcha,
list of things and I said, if I miss
The past
something, then
several
add it at the
months.
meeting.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah,
every time I run into something, I'm like.
It was
this
a
isn't
lot.
quite written right. And I don't know if the town feels like they would want to put tiny house in there. I don't know if those are really
They're gonna
something that's
become a thing.
happening here.
They're gonna be, I'm sure.
So you
If they
wanted
can't
what-
afford the regular houses.
Yeah, you're right. It's something we should definitely.
cottage
go
and cabin.
And add tiny
Yeah.
house to that.
So if tiny house isn't referred to in the zoning ordinance,
Yeah.
we tend to not put a definition in it.
Okay, so if somebody were to bring,
'Cause
something.
how would you even know to even look through the definition section for a tiny
What's gonna
house
be the
if you
definition of tiny
don't
house?
even talk
And
about
you're
it?
gonna Need
Yeah.
section that addresses what.
Okay.
it is.
I think I would
ones on
prefer
wheels,
not
right?
to-
And tiny house would be like the ones they build on wheels, right?
Right, so right now, the historically, the town has looked at that as an RV,
Yeah.
Okay.
more or
Right,
less.
That one
You
would be
fit
an
a-
RV, yeah.
Okay,
Or
Yeah.
a manufactured home if it's got a frame and it's movable, that
Yeah.
might be considered the same as a manufactured home.
So are you looking for a definition for each of these? Is that the idea?
I think so.
Yep,
So how would we define a boathouse?
so
Any-
we can go on
Google
on the,
our definitions.
Webster.
and like the state RSA's is a good place to, just go right through their definitions.
And
And
they got
So
great.
and
you
take a
had-
look
have
at
you done
that.
Already?
So I haven't yet. So the purpose of tonight is to just like go through the list and then you guys tell me, okay, we want to address these things. Then at our next meeting,
Yep.
then I'm giving you this, format. That looks like this that you guys have probably seen before. That's
Yep.
that's what you're gonna get next meeting. That include all the
Well, this-
things that say, want to do this.
If you don't don't
Then
think
it
this is
looks-
for them, you know,
I mean, in
these are
all
just my
honesty-
comments.
In all honesty, if you two ladies found these in there as needing to be defined, then I think we should define them.
Well, boathouse is a big deal.
Oh,
because
I
that's
agree.
on the
I
tax
agree.
card, and then
I
when
agree.
someone that wants to
Right.
rebuild one, and I
This-
can't even have a definition or any
Right.
regulations around.
You're
it.
right, the same thing with a
That should
cupola.
actually be its own
You're right.
separate.
Yeah. the-
Same thing with a cupola, the fence,
With
you
section-
saw them as a,
Not under height where it is now.
Yep.
Is there any
Right.
here that people would, think we don't need to define?
So, I mean, I would say we need to separate debris and litter because they're totally different.
They could, right, they could be. Yep,
I
absolutely.
mean, to-
A
And
lot of
junk.
it is-
Yeah, well, yeah, well,
There's-
yeah,
there's like-
Junk, I mean.
yeah.
It's all
well,
encompassing.
debris is
somewhat,
more of a
right?
house fell down.
Right.
It was sitting there. It could
Right.
be either debris or junk,
Right, but within the
but litter is
ordinance,
garbage.
these three words are used in different sections.
Okay.
So it's kind of being able to look at it all at the same time, having that, three
So just to make
definitions,
sure
and then
we
you can
use-
kind of
Correctly.
maybe have to change other places in the ordinance to,
And does the
match
state in
actually-
Their RSAs define the difference between these or?
they might, yeah. I'm not entirely sure, but that's my first go-to place.
When I'm looking for something, I usually do this digitally. I do a control F and I put in my keyword, and oftentimes junk will show up somewhere, or it'll be junkyard, or it'll just be,
Oh,
a-
and
it'll be
okay.
somewhere, but it's not defined.
Yeah.
So sometimes
Hipsters.
just that like
Upstairs.
takes
Yeah.
my tool away. It doesn't,
Because I Googled,
Yeah.
all
The
these.
junk one, you
Right.
get us around junk car yard. Like a used car yard was all of a sudden considered a junk
oh, really?
car yard or something that came up. in
Well,
one
we
of the
could go with
meetings.
motorcycles and boats and all kinds of
It was
things if you
sort
wanted to
of
go down that.
I think we should add cabin and cottage to that list.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Same in a way, even if it was the same definition, that would be interchangeable.
Right, and then take a look at our seasonal cabin and see, taking a look at all three and then kind of figuring out what fits best or whatever.
Because people take down older buildings and they want to rebuild them. We don't have the word grandfather in here anywhere. Or they want to use in kind, and that definition isn't very friendly. But if they want to take down a cabin that's maybe on one of the islands that will be seasonal. If you want to start over and build,
Typically have to
then,
meet code is,
right, and the
today's code,
residential
not the
code,
code in 1940 and.
yeah.
Sure.
So I can't waive the building code, which is now it has an energy.
Well, I think if
code
they take it
that's
down, and it has to be present code.
to rebuild needs to
Yeah.
be today, there isn't any, people say, well, I'm not gonna insulate it, it's just gonna be a cabin.
So I don't want to take any off here, but could I add another one
You
as
know,
well?
like something
so
that
let-
would help,
so-
that would be good.
Mhm.
All right, so we're gonna add cottage, cabin, grandfathering, and we call it vesting
Whatever you wanna call it.
is
Whatever
probably
you-
a,
That's why in
better
kind is in
term.
here, because that's what shows up, but we don't have a definition for that either.
yep. Okay, what else do you
So
have?
this might be a different question for a different time or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is mobile house defined somewhere?
Not
It's-
Mobile home.
specifically.
It's defined as a manufactured home.
That's about the extent.
Yeah.
of it.
And,
yeah,
yeah,
it
we're gonna
is-
get into that section.
Is
a
that,
little bit
Yeah,
later,
is
but-
that
that's in
problematic?
here
Because
too.
manufactured home can be a prefab house too, right?
That would be a
That's
modular.
Modular.
Where
And
the
they,
pieces
Yeah.
go together, a
Yep.
mobile home would be by itself.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
it's by HUD standards, and it's on a frame, and it can be towed down the road and has an axle.
That's what a mobile home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we
No,
call
no,
them
that's what-
manufactured.
That's a manufacturer.
Still,
Yep.
I mean,
We probably shouldn't use the word mobile home.
Yeah,
The reason why I'm asking about the mobile home is the mobile homes can sit on a lot that's 10,000 square feet. A regular house has to be 2 acres in most of the zones, right? Something like that.
so it's not
Yeah.
10, I don't know where you're getting the 10,000 square
We
feet.
had a
That's
case that
in
came
that-
in,
It's in that.
Is it in that
That's
uh
fine.
yeah. So I-
manufactured ordinance?
We're gonna go through that section. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually on the list, I
That's one of the
think.
red flag
Fair enough,
sections,
fair
so I think it probably good if when we get to that, we'll get to the
Thank you.
nuggets
Alright.
of it.
And if I didn't put it on here, then we're gonna,
So does that take away your addition then?
It might.
Oh,
My
it is.
concern is that the fact that we can put a mobile home on a 10,000 square foot, mobile home actually seems like it could also be a cottage or cabin or, I'm just wondering, how many houses do we want on 10,000 square foot lots? We
right,
don't.
Yeah,
I
gotta
that
believe.
may be,
So but we'll
I
get
have
to
a
it.
feeling, I think
That
that.
also
that
fall into
section-
the category of campground,
as long as there's multiple, I guess.
or if you're putting, well, I mean, let's go back to the
Have
tent we were
to-
talking about the
Oh,
other night.
yeah, yeah.
We got 50 of them being
they-
built. They're all on 10,000 square. It was max, whatever 50 fit on.
You're talking about the one on, yeah.
It's maxed out, right? So the max that you could fit in it are there. And they're all 10,000 square foot lots minus his house,
Yeah.
which was bigger,
Yeah.
right? And I'm just wondering if that's what the town is looking to do. In places, or is it just time to change the rules around mobile homes, or it's defined wrong? But we're
There
gonna get to
is
that, you're saying.
something that was believed to be what the zoning said, and when we read it is not what the zoning says. So that's part of it. So we will get to section 350.
We'll get there.
Either
Yep.
tonight or next time.
Another question for you, Norma. Have you been seeing a lot of people, we were talking about cabins and cottages, that's the only reason why I mentioned it. And we were talking about grandfather. Have you seen a lot of the contractors, builders, property owners knocking down like the three sides and keeping one and saying that it's, they're leaving one walls and then they can, do whatever they want with the rest of it, and saying that it's like a renovation?
Well, they can't, because it doesn't say that in our zoning that they can actually do that.
Okay.
So that's specifically where there's one wall remaining. No, I haven't seen that.
Okay,
Most of them are total demolition and total rebuild.
okay.
There's a couple that are not quite that, but most of
Okay.
them are total rebuilds. So,
All right, so if we can continue with number 2, so the next section is to amend definitions for the following. So these two are current definitions, building envelope, and was suggested to be changed to buildable area.
let's see what, it's in non.
There are sections in here that refer to a buildable area and we don't have a definition for.
So does that need to be added to the definition list as well?
So it might, so that was kind of like, I didn't know where to put that. It's an existing definition, but I'm recommending a new definition, so he kind of sat by itself.
Oh.
It's
okay.
part of an example that's in the middle of the non-conforming structures and uses. They refer to a building envelope. And it's a funny little diagram that doesn't really make sense to me. So
It would
that's
be
where it
covered by
came from.
buildable area then, so it's a
Yeah.
matter of just adding a definition and
Yeah.
changing building envelope then, right?
Well, a building envelope to me is the exterior wall. You know,
It's
that's
not the-
that's
yeah,
the
well, the-
assembly that you're building. You're building
Yeah.
the siding on the outside and the sheetrock in the middle, and you've got a whole wall, and your whole
Mhm.
wall assembly is the envelope of the building, because that's where your insulation has to be continuous. So so that's like the outside of the whole structure. And then here they're referring to it like it's a part of a lot where you can build on.
That's what I thought of.
So it just seemed a little odd.
So
So we can
everyone
discuss
agrees that the buildable area would cover that.
Because that's really what I think it's trying to say.
Yeah.
But that'll be in this non-conforming section that if you
Yep.
look at my page, you'll know why.
Yeah.
We're gonna play there a lot.
So that should be, the definition for buildable area should be added to the.
We can, I'll move that up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Buildable area.
If we change everywhere it says buildable envelope to buildable area, aren't we losing the buildable envelope piece that you want where the installation needs to be?
And well, it depends on where it says it.
Yeah, we might have to,
We might have to,
do
if
that
we run into it in
find.
there, and if it's not labeled correctly, then we could change it, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
and then the next one was, this pre-site built housing, which is an existing definition. And it includes both manufacturing, it talks about both manufacturing and modular homes. And so doesn't section 350. So it just would be so much clearer if they were just separated.
Right,
As
little-
manufactured in mind.
Yeah, it's a little jumbled right now.
because manufactured is HUD standards, what we consider a trailer or a mobile home that's on the axle.
And
that
was
goes down the
which- I'm sorry,
road.
That was which one?
This is pre-site building.
Yep, but the manufacturer.
Manufactured is the.
Okay, that's the
Yeah.
hot one.
On an
Okay,
axle.
I was trying to keep my notes.
Yeah.
And then modular is part or mostly pre-built.
prefab.
And prefabs were seen as two halves put together and still of sort of a substandard quality. But that's not the case anymore.
I was gonna say, I think that if somebody brings a timber frame that's.
Right.
Recut or whatever, yeah. okay.
Right. If you get a Benson wood home, you've got probably the best you could buy.
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
Sorry, Jessica.
Oh, you're fine. So the next section here is, things that may need to be added to the table of uses. So, bunkhouse has its own definition in a section, but it's not listed in the, okay, so the only one.
And is boathouse in the table? of use?
Boathouse is,
It's-
hmm,
It would be.
I don't know if it is.
It's kind of it's an accessory building.
So I think that's why it's not in the table of uses, because there is an ordinance in here that talks about accessory uses being allowed.
This is a non-habitable structure.
Yeah, that actually refers to like a garage or a shed or a barn
And.
in the definition.
I guess I thought that a boathouse would be similar to that.
Yep, so I can look around for something to see what's what.
Yeah.
Didn't we just have a case where we said the boathouse could be habitable as long as it doesn't have a kitchen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't have a definition for boathouse.
No definition. It's okay.
That was on the list. Yeah, we're talking bunkhouse.
Oh, sorry.
Bunkhouse, so we have a definition for bunkhouse.
But that was approved as a boathouse could be habitable.
Not really.
No, I think a boathouse already, my understanding is that if you have a boathouse, you can actually have people sleep in it. They just can't have a
Yeah.
kitchen.
Well, it
couldn't-
can't be a dwelling, and by being a dwelling, it has to meet the definition of a dwelling, which is eating, cooking, sleeping, and sanitation.
Could you
So if
build
you
a
take one of the
bunkhouse
pieces out, then it's not
on
a
a
dwelling.
boathouse?
Right. Some people change the boathouse into a dwelling without asking,
Oh, yeah.
so. I had problems with that one, but
The other thing I've noticed is we're getting a lot of requests for garages with toilets.
yeah. Yep. DES does their septic design based on bedrooms, and they think that's fine, as long as there's no bedroom.
Well, if you're underneath your car, how far do you really want to move to go to the bathroom? Not
Some
much.
bushes. I just find it interesting that
All right, let's get back
Sure.
on track.
4 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
So
There's
within,
lots of interesting things in my world.
within the bunkhouse ordinance, it tells you where it's allowed. So maybe that's why it doesn't live in the table of uses.
Probably.
It's allowed, it's
Okay.
permitted on a lot accessory to a residential use. So maybe it doesn't have to live within that table of uses.
Mm.
So it's permitted on any lot with a residential use.
Yep. So maybe that
You
doesn't,
can strike that.
maybe
one.
that doesn't, yeah, maybe
Wonder
that doesn't
why it
need to
has
be
its own-
addressed.
Its own section, why it's different than any other type of accessory structure.
But I don't know, it's got all kinds of, you can do this, but you can't do that.
Someone thought it was important at some point.
Okay, so I'm gonna cross that off.
Cross off bunkhouse.
Yeah. Okay. Page 2. So this came up in discussion, accessory dwelling units. So within the ordinance, it talks about it being, attached, but it doesn't specify attached how. Like by a roof, by utilities. It's a. So I don't know if that needs to be, specified a little more, that it's attached, physically by a roof or however you want to word it.
Normally had brought up that a dwelling would be, sanitation, cooking and being able to sleep in it. So
Yeah.
I would think that an accessory dwelling unit would have to be directly attached to the house, or if it was built separately, it would have to have the kitchen and the bathroom and all that stuff in it, right? To be
It does,
considered
yeah.
a dwelling.
Yeah,
Right.
So it should be attached to the house, I would think, by some sort of substructure, either being outside walls connected to the house, roof structure.
walkway.
Nah, I probably wouldn't do a walkway. Would you do a walkway for an accessory?
No, because
dwelling?
that's detached,
Some of it would be my determination.
you know?
If they
That's
were to
that's
put
getting a
a
little
roof.
sketchy, I would think, because, you know, depending on how fancy the walkway is.
If they were to
What-
connect it by a
What
roof,
about
is
like
that allowed?
paracots?
Right? Is it an enclosed
If it's
walkway?
an
It depends
enclosed
on what I
walkway,
think attached
exactly. I
means.
mean, if it's a
That's
heated
what it comes
enclosed
down to.
walkway, then how do you
Roof
define that?
structure.
Right,
That's different.
that could just be a long hallway,
Something
Like a
structured.
breezeway.
right?
Yeah, so
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
probably need to state clearer what we think that attachment maybe should be in our minds.
In the regs though, I know that we came across examples where an RDU could be a separate structure, not attached, and
Right.
still qualify. So
Right.
it didn't have to have a roof line that attached or the wall that attached or all that.
Right, because they can either be attached or detached, but above a barn or garage. Lakeshore residential zone, it has to be attached.
For Lakeshore.
Yeah,
I remember
that
But in the
one
other
zone.
zones where it's allowed, it can be attached
Or not
or
attached.
above a barn or a garage.
So you're just trying to define how, what.
Like,
attached
what is
means.
it, what does attached mean?
And I'm sure when you read through these and listen to us, you can probably tell which cases they all came from, because some of
So
these
what
have
if it-
been,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
touching points.
What if it said physically enclosed structure for attached?
Right?
I mean, because I think Nick's thinking about like an open walkway with a
Yeah.
roof
I
over it
would
or
think
something.
that wouldn't consider being
Mhm.
attached. I mean,
But like
just by a roof.
Jessica and I were just talking about over here, I mean, if it's a hallway that's heated or something like that, that's, you know, connecting two facility or buildings. That's pretty hard not to defend as being attached.
Yeah, no, I agree with
Right.
you. That is, yeah, it'd have to.
Yeah,
It would have to
Mhm.
have, so what would you, how would you separate that from, would you make it a certain amount of feet? That, for that
An
walkway?
enclosed, physically attached structure, I guess, something
Well,
like that.
sometimes it's harder to get a clearer definition, because then you get stuck in that.
right.
And
like you just
sometimes it's
said.
easier to
Yeah.
pull away and make
Yeah,
it more,
Yeah,
more loose, so
Yeah.
then you can determine it on a case by case basis.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
Some of these will say it needs to be clearly subordinate to the principal residence. You know,
But in-
so
in
some of this is just the determination of, you know, the building official.
But in this one, we need to understand what an unattached
Yeah.
RDU means as well, because it's gonna impact the lakeside residential zone. Right? Because, so if we say, hey, it can have a covered walkway that has no walls. Then all of a sudden you have a separate structure, sort of,
Mm.
right? And we're breaking the rule of what was intended for the lakeside residential zone, because now we can allow two separate buildings as long as there's a roof between them. Right? So we don't wanna do, I mean, I think we wanna stick to the intent of what this. Okay.
do you feel that that's like, an important enough issue to address? That I can
think-
add
I
to my
think if we
list for
were to
next
say
time?
What you guys are saying, which I don't disagree with, right? We're just trying to define something that's.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But I think if we were to say, hey, an attached means it can have a roof between the two, up to 50 feet or whatever, right, which I know would be ridiculous, but something along that scale, then all of a sudden we've changed the zoning for lakeside residential, and we're saying you can basically have two separate buildings.
I mean, you could still keep that restriction in the lake,
Yeah,
the
you could
lakeshore
say make
resident,
it
you know, you
specific to
could
the
keep
lakeshore.
that. You would just be
Yeah.
changing the other zones.
other zones,
Okay,
and then specifically
Yeah,
preclude
this is-
that lakeshore
Yep.
area.
is an unattached one that would have a breezeway? The going between two buildings, would that be considered attached or unattached right now?
I would probably consider them attached if there was an actual roof structure. If it was, you know, a utility line or just a plumbing line or something underneath a walkway,
Yeah.
I wouldn't really consider any utilities being attached. But if it was a structural attachment, which would most likely
Even if
be
it
a
was
roof
op-
structure,
As a breezeway for me means, so you're saying if it has a roof over it, even if it's open on the sides, that would be attached.
it's kind of like, yeah, that was probably attached.
'Cause that's
If you
where Nick
guys
was
think we
going,
should
right?
have it more
Yeah.
specific, then we'll make it.
I think that, I just feel like that one should be more specific, because now we're opening up a whole. That's, I mean.
That's
you're
why I
you're
was
the
saying
code
like
official, you know?
enclosed physical
Yeah,
attach.
what do you think we should, how should we determine that?
However you
Define
want.
it, I should say.
Yeah, what's important and what do you think is a better way to say what attached might mean?
Is it easier to, what's unattached mean? That there is no roof line attaching it to?
Yeah, to me, unattached is clearly unattached,
But
yeah.
unattached doesn't have like that definition Nick was talking about, that it has to have a toilet and a sink and a kitchen and a. Or
Well,
is that the case?
that's within the accessory dwelling unit anyway, so.
So basically that would be like an in-law is what we're getting.
Yeah,
What I'm
yeah,
asking
pretty
is
much,
basically
right.
an in-law.
What we
It's any
used to
type
call
of
in-law
apartment
apartments.
or in-law
Yeah.
apartment or whatever, we just choose to call them dwelling units.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
we have a definition for a dwelling unit.
I got you.
All right, so I'll add that onto the list and I'll, come up with maybe some proposed language and then you guys can pick it apart.
So even if a permit comes in and it has a living section or area that says apartment or in-law suite or whatever, I usually will just let them know that I'm gonna change that to a dwelling or an accessory dwelling unit. Just so we keep our definitions and what permits are being
Yep.
permitted with all the same wording.
All the wording's the same.
Because
That
that,
makes
if it
sense.
is a definition that we have, then that's what
Excuse me.
really they need to call it, so.
Yep. And that's what I usually end up doing on stuff like that. You do the find, and you go through the entire document, and then you jot down notes.
Yeah.
It's here, it's here, it's here, it's here, and then it all gets changed.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see, section 320. So this is the non-conforming uses, structures and lots. And if you can just take a peek at all the million notes that Noma has at that section, that really needs, I think the entire thing really needs to get looked at. It's not clear. We both feel like there's some instances to where there's requests, for variances or special exceptions, and we feel like, why doesn't the ordinance state exactly what it means? Because it doesn't. So it's left up to interpretation, and you really shouldn't,
Language.
yeah, you really shouldn't
Yes.
write ordinances that leave, things up for interpretation. You really
We
try to-
eliminate that.
Right, you really try to make it clear as to, what is expected of a property owner.
And do you want to mention the fact that we could revamp this and get some help with a professional that could help us?
Yes,
rewrite it?
so as a leftover from last year, we had Tara Bamford as our consultant. So with that warrant article, that had passed, we still have $1,610 left. That's good until 2026. So we do have some funds. And with your guidance, I could reach out to her and see if she could help us with some stuff.
So do we need a motion on that or?
Want to hold off on that until
We
we
get through
really
it.
kind of get
All right.
through all of it, and then, but I'm kind of like,
Is there any?
That
I
would be
guess
my
one question
recommendation to the
then, is there
committee.
Anything else that is,
That's what I was gonna ask next, that we should consult her on.
is
that
there any
you feel we
others
should.
that are gonna be, needing some third-party support?
Well, this
Um,
is the biggest red flag.
It
to
is it?
me.
yeah,
Because
Okay.
every ZBA case, most of them end up in here and they end up going in a circle,
Okay,
Let me ask you, I
you
mean,
know?
would the consulting be used for her to research and come up with the definition?
to help us, she could possibly, and I say I haven't talked to her yet, but I would like to hire her again.
To help us with the
To
definition,
help us, yeah,
Better
kind of,
define.
right, go over that.
Not speaking from ignorance, so I apologize, but could we not go to another town or to the states and get the definition of how they handle these? No,
I'm not entirely, I don't know, I'm not entirely sure,
but she could do
Okay.
that.
but, right,
that we would pay her to do that for us.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd have to see.
I just don't see $1,600 going that far, so if this is.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. So that's my other part of that, is to kind of throw something at her and say, okay, the committee is looking to do this. Like, what do you think? What of your hours and your, research hours and all that
$1,600,
stuff.
what can you do?
Right, what could you get us for that? And then we can handle the rest, kind of a thing.
Give us some guidelines.
You're right, even just some guidance
And then,
or,
and look at best practices in other townships. or-
yeah, yep.
Well, if you ever had the desire, you could read through some of these. And even just the heading titles. It doesn't clearly tell you which section would apply. It's never a clear decision which one. It says uses, structures and lots. And
Yes.
it sort of mixes them together, and then it says you can use this over here, but then this structure has to be this way, like, and then none of them can be altered or expanded or changed. And then down here, they're changing and expanding.
Does everybody on the zoning board have that?
Yeah,
Yeah, they get a copy of the zoning ordinance every year.
we just updated it in the spring,
Mhm.
you know, and then they have, those that are removed voluntarily, which most of these cases are. It's just interesting.
Mm, yeah, but that one definitely needs some
But
serious
it really
revamping.
needs
Could I get a
professional
copy of
help.
them? Must have-
I was gonna say, it doesn't sound like one of the
Misplaced.
members doesn't have
I
it.
must have missed, because
Go
you guys are great
online.
about sharing the different pieces that we need for each of the days, but can I request a copy of that from who I request a copy?
Yes, that would be me.
Our website.
Yeah, it is on the website, but I can print you out a paper copy. And then you can put all these like fun tabs. And you know exactly where you're going. Yep.
Jessica, is part of the problems here, the fact that we don't belong to the Lakes Region Planning Commission, but that would be a good resource.
They do help towns with stuff like this.
I
Um,
suspect every town's got an issue with this.
They do.
yeah,
I've been swimming in ordinances for years. So.
Yeah.
Because we're like the only town that isn't a member
correct.
from a decision that was made years ago.
Yes. Yep.
And I know we've talked about it, but should we bring that up again?
And so that's actually on the action plan
Okay.
from that came out of, you know, that master plan update is one of the things for the selectmen to review or reconsider or to consider becoming part of the
Do you want to
Regional
share a little more
Commission again?
history there or?
I just
Being vague.
had heard years ago that the selectmen didn't want to be part of it anymore.
right. They felt like
Didn't want to, they thought it was too expensive or whatever else. And
right, the expense, they felt that the commission, they were under the impression that the commission was there to tell towns and communities what to do and how to, you know, how to run their things, how to write their ordinances, and that's not necessarily the case. I mean, they do offer suggestions, right? I mean, they are regional, they are pretty educated on, you know, a lot of information that we could
Every
actually
other
take
town
advantage
belongs to
of.
it. It seems odd we don't.
How far back does this go?
This was, I want to say 2000, maybe like 16, 17.
So 8 years
Area?
ago.
Yep, it's about $9,000-ish a year to be a member.
Mhm.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that covers everything that we may need assistance with. You know, there's still maybe a cost to that, but that's an action item for the selectmen to discuss.
now would that have to be a warrant article or?
It
A line
could
item
be
in
a
the
warrant
budget.
article, or it could become a, you know, a line item in a operating budget, or, yep.
So it's not the purview of ZAC, then it's really got to go to selectmen.
Right, I mean, all of the planning board and all of their committees could, you know, put in a recommendation.
Yeah.
But it's really up to the selectmen because it comes out of their
Come up
budget.
with the Selectmen?
It is not.
No.
No, huh?
No.
Okay.
It should.
Yeah, it seems to me that it's got some poignancy.
Yep. Okay,
I've worked in a smaller town that was part of a larger regional planning commission that was very, very helpful. They were always there to help us. They would show up at our office and help us with wording, and
So this concern about them
Supporting.
directing or telling them what to do is a
Right.
little off target then, in
it's
your
just
opinion?
half of the picture.
Yeah.
most
Right.
likely. Yeah.
right, and and it's not just because they recommend something, and I mean, it's up to, you know, the planning board to say, these
Yeah,
are the
exactly. I
final
mean, yay or
ordinances
nay,
go
it's
on a
still-
ballot,
right,
or,
yeah.
you know, I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to do what they tell you to do,
I think it just goes back to why reinvent the wheel?
you know?
If somebody else has already done the work.
Yeah,
But I mean, coming back to like the whole non-conformance, you know, uses and
Would that
Probably.
have,
make life a lot easier to work on drafting something there too.
yeah,
mhm.
do you feel like that in this particular instance, some like that, I'm sorry, what was the name of it?
The planning commission,
The
yeah,
planning commission would have helped us in an area like that?
Potentially, and because we stopped being part of that commission prior to me being a planner, like I really don't know the, you know, number of things that they could actually really assist with. So,
Okay. I think that's something we should probably bring up. You know, you made a very valid point. If we're gonna talk to Tara Bamford about what's left in the $1,600 and what we have left. I mean, we're talking about not you know, a line item of $9,000. We're already gonna spend, you know, probably like he had mentioned, it's gonna soak up quite a bit of that on one item. It's not gonna last very long.
Right.
So the spending the 9,000 seems like a much better option.
Right.
Something we should be brought to the selectmen's attention, I think.
I mean, ordinarily, things like this fall upon the planning department and the town planner to draft language, you know.
But that
But
belonging to
then
that would
it's
make,
just-
Where do you go to do that?
I know, right. So to find, you know, we just, I mean, as you all know, we're just, I mean, so busy isn't even cover how busy we are. You know, so it's that time that you need, you know, research, right? Rewrite, you know, things like that. So it's helpful to have consultants. It's helpful to have, you know, some outside sources to be able to.
And they do that within the scope of the $9,000, or is that?
I'm not sure. I don't know if something like this would be covered under that or if that's an additional expense. Like I said, I haven't had that opportunity to work with them, so I don't know exactly how all that functions.
Well, they- Just the planners from the towns that are,
Yeah, it's a regional commission, so it's,
several planners from each of the.
there are some planners that are from, you know, the towns that are associated with Lakes Region.
But but the commission doesn't have people sitting on their thumbs right now waiting to do this work for us, if we'll pay them. It's
Well,
a
that-
commission
that's-
made up of people.
that's my question.
Right? So you would sit on that commission too, probably, or somebody from here would, right?
Yeah, there would be a representative.
And so
Yeah.
if you were a representative for that and another town came over to us and said, hey, what are you doing for this line item? We'd say, we have no idea. We're trying to figure it out. Right? And they'd say, well, we are too. And then the next guy, I mean, who's gonna, I'm thinking just people. that are
Probably
gonna
they
be-
don't.
Yeah,
maybe
I mean,
just
they
sit down,
have,
yeah,
they have their own,
waiting for
yeah,
that request
they
to
have
come
their
in.
own people.
I think there's people, oh, there are people.
Yeah, they have their own people,
Oh, okay.
You know,
Take it back.
But I'm thinking.
but they may include planners.
not to add
Yeah.
to your already overwhelming plate. But I think that's something that we should probably look into sooner rather than later. I think we should probably. that's
Especially with budget
something-
season coming up.
With budget
and
season
things
coming
like
up and
that.
then, you know, we're looking at a lot of definitions on the other page that we just discussed.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about, you know, non-conforming uses, structures and lots. I think it's something we should probably look into sooner rather than later. It'll
Right.
assist you
And
in,
it's also helpful for the highway department. So being part of the commission kind of helps towns become sort of more important in the state size when it comes to like their 10-year plan. You know, it kind of, you know, we're just kind of at the end.
okay.
You know, we're not as important as the other towns that are part of the commission.
Is that something you're willing to look
Mm.
into and we can bring it to the board?
I can
and
do that. I
discuss it?
had kind of looked at it in the past and it kind of fizzled.
So do you
Okay.
want to
Uh,
draft something to be supported by ZAC to go to the selectmen? or do you wanna
It
do-
could, I mean, it could come from the planning board, you know, it could be addressed with the planning board as well. I mean, it
Mhm.
could come from,
Okay.
it could come from the CIP committee as well. You know, it could come
The
from.
more recommendations that we
you know,
have, the better
right.
the odds are that it will go through.
Could. You
There's something to
know,
be said for CIP though. I mean, because that's where the, you know, all the monies are gonna be allocated anyway, right?
right. So.
I mean, in a
first thing-
situation like this, though, especially where all the surrounding towns already belong to it, and we're talking about definitions that could easily be, you know, you pick up a phone and we'd be able to have answers right away for them
I
and
mean,
a
$9,000
definitive.
pretty nominal in.
In the grand scheme of things, especially considering all the hours that you would put into all of this, if you think about it, the hours on it. And on an overwhelming plate already, I think it's something we should probably, if it's possible to get letter of recommendation from the ZAC committee, the zoning board and the planning board. I think it's something that we should probably push forward to and then bring it before us. And I think it's, you know, that seems like a pretty, so I didn't know that that would have helped out so much in cases like this. I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
so I can reach out to them and, you know, give
Not
them,
to change the subject.
yeah,
but
no, and get an idea of, you know, what is it that they have to offer?
I think
Yeah, I
that's a
think
solid,
You know,
go there for.
that-
for
I do
that's-
believe, yeah,
Right,
I do
so then that way,
if you
Yeah.
don't
No,
mind.
I suspect that's a you know, the membership fee, and then you've got all the
Add-ons.
add-ons on top of that.
yeah, so that's what I really kind of want to see.
Yeah, I think we should know.
There's
Yeah.
always add-ons.
Right, right. Yeah,
Okay,
okay,
thank you.
Potentially save even in some legal costs as well.
Well, we were just talking about,
Just by avoiding
you know,
it, right?
talking to Tara, that's a substantial expense, you know, if we were able to, instead of utilizing Tara for that specific instance, you know, save that money and, you know what I mean, we'll use it at a later date.
Yeah.
You know, it just makes more sense to me as far as financial goes.
Any selectmen who were on the board in 2018 that shot this down?
No, I think no.
so.
no, they're all new.
We got two of them here.
Yeah,
Okay, so,
True.
number 5, height restrictions. So this again was discussed throughout the year. The potential of decreasing the maximum height in the Lakeshore residential zone. You know, one being, you know, there are people that pay, you know, view tax, you know, to have that view of the lake.
this is extremely important.
Helping to have some,
Very
you know, lower height.
It just
In-
seems
in
weird that
that
there's one
zone.
height for any building in the whole town, like
I agree with you.
different than
I
that.
think that needs to be addressed
Yeah.
because you drive down, you
Yeah,
cruise
but
down the lake in a
traditionally,
boat.
Fire department. So
Right.
the
the
biggest
height of
ground
their
ladder
ladder.
typically carry.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
And the other part of that is to, maybe limit the size of a replacement structure. You know, taking that small cottage that was, you know, 15 feet away from the lake. And now you're building this giant house that's 15 feet from the lake. Cause you're gonna go apply through that non-conforming ordinance to be able to build something.
That you
in
can
its
expand
place.
because it's not clear in this non-conforming section what expand means. And if you give them an okay for this one section, they can expand and alter and change.
That one's extremely
Yeah,
important,
Then
I
there's
think.
not an end to what
big-
that means.
Non-conforming, you shouldn't change the
I mean,
footprint.
all these things are just
Yeah.
right for, you know, being part of that Lakes Region Planning Association, it would seem to me.
Yep.
Because there's
But
gonna
yeah,
be
these
best
are-
practices from other towns, you know, I gotta
Mhm.
believe in that.
Yep. It's okay, so that was the issue with height restrictions. Number 6, section 340 sign regulations. So I've actually had this question a couple of times this year. So it refers to the lighting being shielded. It doesn't really
Well,
say what does,
Is that kind of meaning like dark sky kind of thing?
right, or having your, you know, your downlit lighting with, you know, like a collar around the light or a shield.
Yeah, so you're not
Right.
blasting 30,000 lumens everywhere, yeah. Yep, that makes
Um,
sense.
So that was that.
It probably wouldn't hurt
So
to have
what
a,
happens next on these? Just you're gonna
Mm.
come back with more information?
Yeah, I'm gonna come back with an actual, like, the ordinance, it's gonna be written in black and all the changes are in red, there's those crossouts like that. Yeah, so then you can actually see the exact thing that you're gonna be potentially amending.
yeah, I don't think it would be a bad idea to have some definitions of types of signs, because sometimes it'll call a sign something and it's not always clear what that is.
Are you,
We
you
need to add
mean,
that to the list and the definitions.
There's.
It could become, like, within that section, you
Yeah.
could have, you know, its own set of
Yeah.
definitions.
are you
There
talking about a commercially lit sign or like in a residential house sign or?
Well, it's any of that.
Yeah,
Any of
it's-
those?
yeah.
It's all
Like
in
in general.
here and it's not that clear.
Okay,
Yep, and then I saw, yesterday, There's a section in the ordinance, it's called appearance review. And it talks about, billboards and, other types of signs. That isn't listed in the sign regulation. So you're not even gonna know that is a thing unless you happen upon an appearance review ordinance that you'd never think of looking at. So that I'm gonna kind of look at again and see if we can tie it together or move that out of that section
Into the
and put it in
section.
sign or put some reference, because it does
Yep.
reference, it has to do with appearances. So it might need to live there, but some type of, C section, whatever, for more
Reference,
information.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to link things together so you can follow it. I did notice the number F under the sign ordinance does have definitions. It has off-premise sign, just sign in general, temporary sign. So there's 3 different definitions in there.
Do you feel that those are sufficient enough for what you were just talking about, or?
Yes and no. I think when we start talking about some of the signs, like, they'll say 1 or 2 sided, and does that mean it's one of those little A-frame signs, and is it, what's a temporary sign? So I just haven't gotten into this too much.
Okay.
Um,
So if
I
you
can,
want to review
get
that,
some
and let me know what your issues are.
I need a
Since
little more
you're,
attention.
you kind of work in that a lot more than I do.
Yep.
And then you just let me know and, maybe I could bring that to the next meeting.
Well, I had 1 sign permit and it was a struggle to figure out what it was actually telling me she couldn't do. Because it's not that clear.
Okay.
Let me highlight it and bring it back to you.
Gives
Or
you
did-
latitude.
'cause they were crazy
Yeah.
with the signs.
That's the way I look at it.
Or at least, try to clarify it a little bit, yeah.
All right, so continuing on in the memo, section 410. Lakeshore Residential Zone, this was left over from last year and I think the prior year.
Description?
There's no description for the Lakeshore Residential Zone, and I think there's another zone actually that doesn't have a description. So what I mean is,
Residential.
yeah, there are sections right after table of uses. And,
You mean it's defined but doesn't have a description, right?
right, like say for instance, section 420, which is the recreation service zone, it tells you what is that zone all about? What does that mean? It gives you sort of its own description. And
But the lakeside residential zone was all about funding the rest of the zones. 'Cause the taxes are so high. And you laugh and I laugh too, but I think
Right.
that's what someone defined it as to me.
Well,
And
the people that
actually-
live there aren't the ones that voted in March, I'm pretty sure.
none of the other zones have a description now that I'm looking at all of them. Just the recreation service zone has a description.
Yep.
What do you mean they didn't vote? Like,
Well, I
they-
think when we vote in March, a lot of people that live here in the summer aren't full-time and they don't vote, so some of the budgets didn't get.
I can tell you that a lot of people in the lakeside residential zone vote and attend
Hopefully,
these
yeah.
meetings. I mean, I live in that and all
Yeah.
my neighbors show up for all this stuff.
There's enough people that live year round there that hopefully do.
And they come back, and that's why we got in big trouble when the meetings kept getting moved. Right, people
yeah.
that come back and they said, hey, you gotta tell me beforehand, which I know is a problem because you have to be in a meeting to be able to to reschedule and all that.
Yep.
But that's something we should address at some point is more
Yep.
notification around whether or not there's gonna be changes and how to inform people.
Of the meeting dates and times.
If meetings change, if cases get moved to different months, cause there were a lot of people coming up from Massachusetts and New York. Wondering, hey, I drove 3 hours, we're not gonna hear this today, I gotta come back in a month.
That was
You do
addressed, that
zoning?
was addressed at one of our selectmen meetings.
What's the answer?
We're currently looking into that, right, Mr. Shea?
Yep.
About the ability to notify, we had discussed that, right? The ability to notify people about meeting changes and times and dates being canceled and stuff like that. That was discussed, wasn't it? Yeah, I thought we
And
had.
we put them on agendas, so if we know ahead of time that something's continued, we put it on the agenda, like right underneath that.
Yeah.
We'll put continued to whatever
I
date.
thought, if my memory serves me, hopefully it does. I remember it being discussed and it was not decided, but we were more leaning towards we have enough I mean, there's online. There's actually, it was Jen, I think, that brought it up, Jen Collins from downstairs, about being able to, reach out to people, having their, a dedicated page for that. And we give them the option, it was about taxes, I think. We give them a written, they have the internet, they're able to do all those things. But I mean, as far as personal calls go and letting them know that a meeting got changed, there's no real, I mean, if they live out of state, I mean, it's their due
Yeah, there's no
diligence
way
to
call
look
people
online,
or email people,
to be able to
The
see.
other problem is what they can cancel at 24 hours before. or
you know?
Yeah,
As for continuance and
yeah.
Yeah,
So it
Uh,
makes it very difficult. That was the issue that we
sometimes we
ran
don't
into.
know.
I know, sometimes you don't know until you're at the meeting. And unfortunately, it's happens, and that you can't really do much about,
Yeah.
you know?
One thing I would ask is making the assumption that people that live in the lakeside residential zone are not gonna show up. It's a bad assumption.
That's a fair point.
I wasn't making that assumption.
No, was your name mentioned in my comment?
Right.
Well, you did say it in a minute.
Well, I was just sort of feeling like the people that live here year round maybe mostly aren't on the waterfront, but I could be wrong about that.
I don't know, you may be right, right?
Well, I just have a lot of people saying, why are you so busy and why don't you have any help? And how come you don't have someone helping you? And like, we had a budget that needed to get passed. And we're working on a default budget and we don't have money for a part-time person that was
Right.
ready to come work here.
Well, that's a variety of issues, right? Because
It is.
nobody wants to pay more taxes. No, that's sort of.
I think it was a tax increase that was near same time frame, maybe.
Yeah,
I heard.
it was a good size one this year, or a couple of years ago, I guess.
Not
Let's
the
keep it-
town, it was the county.
So number
Right.
7, I
Moving on.
actually would like to push that off.
Okay.
Restrictions governing use.
No, the one above that, number
The
7.
Lakeshore Residential.
Yeah, because it's actually all of the zones except for that one zone, so that's like a huge undertaking. that,
Okay. So
um,
cross that off.
Strike 7.
So I'm gonna put that off till a potential for next year.
Sounds good.
Yes, it does. Okay. So number 8, section 412, E, restrictions governing use. So this is a section that refers to a manufactured home as a mobile home.
Or travel.
And it
trailer.
also, yeah, it's also still stuck with that old terminology of being a travel trailer. So that's just kind of like a cleanup thing.
So
That's
that's a
not a
cleanup,
major,
right.
yeah, that's not
Okay.
really a major thing, but,
So do we need that
um,
in the minutes?
so that might just be able to go under like an administrative thing.
Yeah.
And the whole, I know earlier I brought up the whole idea of being able to stick the mobile homes on 10,000 square feet. That's a different issue than you want to be coming out of this meeting, right?
That could be talked about when we look at that whole section. 350.
Which we will.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Is there
Uh,
something specifically that you want to discuss that's in there? Because you seem like pretty hot about that one.
There's a bunch of things I'd like to discuss, actually, right? So the height restriction piece, sure, but we're gonna see that later, right? But I'm also of the mindset, I'll just throw it out there that, hey, people paid to get the 35 feet, right? And they own the air rights.
And they own the what?
See, that's
People own the. air
where
rights.
you're wrong. People are paying taxes, a view tax on houses that are behind the monster houses, and they're still paying them. That's the problem. There should be a height restriction on the lake, period. There is in other towns, so there should be with ours.
We do have it, it's 35 feet.
It should be lower than that. 35 feet's big. That's big. And we're only talking about the people that are knocking down the structures now. That's what we're talking about
No,
going forward.
Yeah, so it's grand, who's ever there is there.
Who's ever there is there, but there
And-
should
And
definitely
it
be
could
that.
it could include, depending upon, slope of the land. Like you could maybe put a 35-foot house that's not gonna be in the way of someone behind you because, they're way up here and they can still see over. I mean, there could be some
Someone bought the
variables,
house After, the house was here already, the house in the water.
Yep.
And someone bought the lot behind them and built
Yep.
the house. Right?
Yeah.
You think they should have the right to be able to see the water width through the house? No,
I'm confused. What do you mean exactly?
well, there's a house that's on waterfront,
Yeah,
right? And I come in and I buy the lot behind it,
yeah.
right? And they knock that down and they want to put up a different house that's gonna have to go through all the planning.
On the lakeside, you're
On
talking
the
about.
lakeside,
Yeah,
and I'm
yep,
back here.
yep.
That they shouldn't be able to build the 35-foot house again. Because it'll impact my view because I bought the lot behind.
Yeah.
Knowing that house was
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree
believe
with
that.
you when we get
Yeah, I
there,
was gonna
think.
say, that's a tough call because I mean,
But I think, I guess the reason on the mobile home one, which is what you asked about, is, yeah, I do want to take a look at the regulation and understand if 10,000 square foot per mobile home makes sense. If you can stick 50 of these and whatever the math is, I don't know math to do it that quickly. But it seems like a small amount of space to have 50 houses on if each one's on 10,000 square foot. So
Mhm.
yeah, I do want to talk
so
to that. and see if
we
that
can
makes sense.
address that as part of the master plan potentially, right?
The master plan's a different problem, I think.
That we can address in the ordinance at the next meeting.
Yeah, the master plan, and I know I discussed this with Russell, and I know Russell's kind of out of everything now, but I discussed this with Russell. The master plan.
Sorry, who's Russell?
Russell Wilder.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know if you know.
Yeah, okay. Now I
But-
moved up.
But anyhow, he was involved in writing it, and one of the things that came out in a meeting I was at, with people asked me, hey, what's going on with zoning?
Mm.
And I talked a little bit about what we're doing and different things, and I said, one of our problems is that one of our criteria on assessing the validity of a case is that it says, does this fit within the intent of the master plan? And I said, the master plan is written a little bit loose. And a lot of the discussion was around Cherry Valley, but not specific to that, but I know that's what people were thinking because it was that time. And I said, the master plan allows a forestry business to be in that zone that Cherry Valley, whatever, is in. And if I looked up what forestry is, I found out that I would have thought that's taking all the logs out, but no, it could be a guy just in there actually foresting and picking certain trees.
Clear cut, not clear cut, and selective cutting. There
Selective
we go.
cutting and all that stuff. So it's not real clear on all these things. But one of the requirements of our assessment on any case is, does it fit the goal of the master plan? And on that one, it had a cross-country ski trail around it. So is it recreational? I guess so, but, well, it's not, Mark, it wouldn't be recreational for us, just the people that are there. Well, that's true too. They also had a sledding hill. Is that recreational? I don't know. It's just not clear. And then Russell's point was, well, Mark, you're not supposed to be using the master plan as a guide for deciding anything. And I said, well, Russell,
Then why do you have a master plan? I'm sorry.
Right, because
But
the
the-
master
but the
plan
document says that.
guides how you're implementing your regs and how you're
Exactly.
implementing your zoning ordinance.
Agreed.
Really
It shouldn't
take
be
exception
at
to
a
that,
zoning
yeah.
board meeting that you're saying, oh, this,
yeah, it's not optional. It's
right.
not an option.
right.
But I'm taking us down a different path.
Yeah.
No, that's,
So some of
I
these
think
things I would disagree with you on.
oh, that's okay.
Right.
Hey, but that's why we're on this,
Right.
right?
I know.
Yeah, yeah.
The master plan is just the guide. It's the vision of the town.
But, I
But
think
our
you bring
doc,
up,
but on each case,
Right.
does it fit the intent of the master plan? If it doesn't, vote it, it should be a no.
so
But
coming
and
back to
Russell
your-
said
Which
exactly what
doesn't
you
make
said.
sense because
It's-
already should
but
fit
it-
the intent of the
it can't be
master
a
plan.
special-
So that's weird.
so
That's a
maybe-
weird criteria item.
Let's come back to your point about modular homes on,
Yeah.
10,000 square feet. I mean, that to me is problematic at some level too. So, whether or not that's definitively described in the master plan is probably not the case, but
But it is in the regs.
Mhm.
And one in the zoning regs, and it's very specific that way.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's, but we'll
So
get
we
to
can
that.
do,
Yep.
so we address it at that point.
Yep.
One of the
Yep.
big
Sorry, I
sections we
took
want
us
to
on a
look at.
tangent.
No, that's what this
There's
is
a
all
little
about.
emotion.
Alright.
That's
All
good. We
about-
like to see that.
All right, so I'm just gonna cross off number 9 because I stuck that in number 7.
Okay.
That was kind of a leftover. Number 10 is review the land use section of the action plan that came out of the 2023 master plan update. So that is this spreadsheet. So the master plan implementation committee met for the first time last week, and we went over the action items. So the action items that, where they live in the master plan are kind of like at the end of each chapter. There's that blue section and it lists all the action items. So we took this, stuck it into a chart. So then this is, gonna help sort of weed out who's responsible, kind of who heads, who spearheads, a potential, zoning amendment, or there's all kinds of stuff. This is just the land use section. So I'm just gonna call it the MPIC committee, just for ease of language. They had recommended that, ZAC kind of take a peek at these and maybe start acting upon some of them, or, discussion, anything. So if we wanna go through, each one of these. I might be able to help streamline it a little bit. So the first one, which is number 45, this one is just, just making sure that there's a thorough review that takes place, with the zoning ordinance on a whole. Just to make sure it, complies with the master plan and, I think this one talks about, oh, that's, sorry, it's number 46.
I have a comment, just when I see the word density in there. There was a gentleman looking to propose a mobile home park. And was looking at the word density, and he really wanted me to define what it was and what it meant from the town. And that just wasn't really something that I could find in there. So there is a word, and there's a thing about density, and it's in the manufactured home section, so we may get that when we redo that section.
Okay.
We may need to define a word like that, so it's clearer.
All right.
You want to put density on the definition list?
Yeah, I had to
Yep.
Google it and
Got
then
it.
calculate it.
Okay. Okay, so this was, number 46. This was a big one, to, eliminate the residential commercial district and incorporate 3 new mixed use zoning districts. Which would include, a new zone called Alton Bay, Alton Village, and commercial. With that would also include, review of the table of uses to change things around, and sort of what types of zones are particular, uses allowed in. Kind of changes the makeup of the town. We don't really have like a traditional commercial district. They're kind of interspersed throughout the town.
What's this down here called?
I think residential.
This is residential commercial.
Residential commercial.
Yep.
But there isn't one that's just commercial.
There is.
There is
No.
not.
Nope.
No. Okay, I'm surprised by that.
I'm surprised too.
Right. And we don't have like a light industrial type zone, things like that. Which would be a good place to, have some type of, industrial park with
Yeah,
larger
we kind of
businesses
went
that
down
could
discussion.
offer jobs for people in town.
Because there was some discussion about that during the master planning committee meetings about up on Route 28, potentially set aside,
Yep.
right?
Right. Yep. Because there is, town water
Yeah.
in that area.
I think it's pretty problematic to do in the already established areas, as I see it.
It is like, this is a gigantic undertaking.
I mean, it's like, talk
This
about
is-
fighting
yeah.
City Hall.
This is, right, this is like, it's one sentence, but it's huge.
It's a can of
It's a
worms,
huge.
as I see
One
it.
item can take a year.
Yeah,
is that
right,
really-
exactly.
Take a lifetime.
Right,
to be
it's a
realistic.
lot of,
You
right,
know,
it's
people are
cost,
fights.
there's, it's a lot.
When
So-
you think about it, as far as the commercial and then light industrial go, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where I feel like the town, you know, it's more of a, I hate to use the word like bedroom community, but it's always been a bedroom community.
Yes.
If we do something like that, where we, you know, offer a light industrial or a strictly commercial zone, I feel like that would start to take over a specific area in town, I would think, right? Is that something that the
Yeah,
like,
so,
the
right,
master
you-
plan
yeah.
would want to see
That
that,
it should be
right?
someplace that's, you know, really outside of the Alton Bay areas, you know, in terms of the central districts up in.
Right.
And define a commercial zone where, you know, if a Lowe's is gonna come in or a Home Depot, that it's gonna be done in that area and
Yep.
in,
We
let's say, the
did-
center of the
Yeah,
town.
we did do those, like a proposed map.
But even
In that update, there's a proposed, you know, potential sort of very sort of vague areas, like this area kind of might be the commercial zone.
And
This
the goal
area
of,
could be
the goal
village.
of that would be to avoid like a Lowe's or something like that, putting it in like downtown,
Like downtown.
right?
Because
So that
it's
would be the
allowed.
goal of it.
You-
Okay.
You know?
That makes
it-
sense.
It's allowed. It's an allowed
I
use,
understand.
so
I was thinking of it, I was thinking.
It's
you
to
could have a
prevent-
big Lowe's right
I'm
smack
trying to
dab in a bunch
prevent
of
it. That's
houses.
Prevent, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
How long
Yeah.
has Family Dollar been there?
Oh, I'm not sure. I was there before
It's
I
been
started.
there, when did Scotty Simon's dad sell that land? That must be, I would think 10 years ago. I would think,
I think
maybe,
roughly.
well, 5 at least.
More than 8.
Yeah, so yeah, it's gotta be like. 9 or
Yep.
10, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so
That
that's
makes
that one.
sense.
So what do we want to do on this? Do we just
If
want
we
to
have
strike
enough
down?
time
the
for
So
line? We
I
don't-
think the task for tonight, because all of these are not simple. It's
Yeah, I'm
not,
just looking at all
like,
these
we
things
could
and
just
thinking,
throw it on
how-
our
what do we
wanna
list.
take on?
How long are we
So
talking about this?
It just, so tonight, it's, you know, it's
For
discussion, right? It's discussion, kind of like what this change, like what it might entail. You know, does it entail costs? Is it, you know, it's just kind of not letting these things die and sit on a shelf and collect dust. You know,
And what's the responsibility of ZAC relative to like number 46? I mean, I just don't see that that's realistic for us to even think about
I
tackling.
mean, right, so the part of the discussion could be, hey, maybe if we get part of the Lakes Region Planning Commission, some of these larger items could potentially, you know, we can get
Then
some
it
help
becomes a
from
matter
them.
of what are you going to prioritize relative to this whole list?
Yep. Right.
I got you.
Because I don't, you know, to say we're going to do all these things is frankly a little naive.
And that's not what I'm saying. yeah.
Right, okay.
No, so these are just things that came out of the update that, you know, people
Okay.
had submitted.
All right. You're just the messenger.
I am just trying to relay information, Doug. Focus, number 47, focus Alton Bay zoning on tourism and water-based recreation in Alton Bay. So that may entail, you know, modifying some of, you know, existing ordinances with, our amusement, you know, indoor and amusement outdoor uses that we have. Maybe those are too restrictive. Maybe they require, you know, too much acreage or too much of a setback or things like that. So that might be something that we could look at. So that's what that one is. Let's see. Number 48, talks about the, you know, the potential of the Alton Village, and encouraging different types of dwellings and businesses consistent with a village feel. So again, that's on how we're writing our ordinances, what's allowed, what's not allowed, you know, part of the appearance review, things like that. Number 49 also talks more about the potential of creating a new commercial district and what that would include, what it would look like, potential areas it could be located in. So yeah, again, that's another huge thing, like number 46.
Yeah.
Number 50. It's kind of the same thing as the other two. So that's kind of a reroute, because I think that's one of the zones that was suggested to be done away with, because Alton Bay, Alton Village and commercial would consume what's allowed in the rural residential zone. You'd kind of do away with that zone, but get all the,
Mhm.
divvy out the uses into those. Just so they fit better.
Coming back to Alton Bay, Alton Village and commercial, you're saying?
Yeah, yep. Let's see, 51 frontage requirements, unlimited access highways. So that's, some work with the state.
That's the type of thing where, having more insight from like the Lakes Region Planning would be
Right,
beneficial.
they might
So I can
have
see-
data on it. Let's see. So number 52. This is referring to Lakeshore Residential District. It's suggesting to allow home businesses, which currently are not allowed. Low impact recreation, small scale hospitality businesses compatible with existing homes. Water quality protection. And historic land uses, so that's kind of, revamping the Lakeshore Residential District to allow a little bit more flexibility and to,
But that applies to all the regions though, doesn't it? I mean, because I went through that, actually have a business at my residence, in the rural district.
right,
So you're not precluded. There's nothing precluded specific to the Lakeshore Residential District, is there?
yeah, like, what it's, so home businesses aren't allowed. This low impact recreation, I don't know if that has to do with the amusement uses. That must be what that refers to. It's. Yeah, so in the Lakeshore Residential Zone, amusement use indoor and outdoor are not allowed.
Okay.
Public recreation, not allowed. There may potentially be other uses in here that refer to recreation that aren't allowed either, so. So there's,
I suspect most of the
potential of
people in
that.
Lakeshore Residential District are not terribly excited about having those type of activities in there.
I would think, no, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, you're friends with a lot of your neighbors. I mean, is that something that they would want to see change?
In my neighborhood, there was, a lot of the discussion is about this casino that was supposed to come in at one point. Is anybody aware of that?
What?
No, I haven't
I
heard.
heard about that one.
And a place called High Chaparral, which I actually own. If none of this means anything, then maybe you've heard of this. It was High Chaparral. And there was a casino that was potentially going to come in and buy it. This goes back 30 years, I guess, maybe 40 years even.
They were gonna buy your property?
They were gonna buy if you go down Woodlands,
Yep.
they were gonna buy the inside, if not the Woodlands to the water, that had houses all on it. The inside had nothing on it. There was an opportunity at a place called High Chaparral, which happens to be my house. It's 248. But High Chaparral and then going over the Sulky's land, they were gonna put a casino in there. And all the people on the water side banded together and bought the other side of the land so the casino couldn't have enough space. And now that everybody on that street owns 2 lots.
Yep, that makes
So-
sense
Yeah.
why they put garages across the street.
So all the
time.
shit we're
That
talking
Yeah.
about, all the crap we're talking about with residential dwelling units, they're throwing a garage across the street and putting 2 bedrooms in.
Cover the taxes.
Because it's in a different lot. But the one thing that strikes me on all this is if you go through the master plan, right? the thing that resounding through all of it, all the small town feel is the most important thing when asked. What do you like best about the town? Small town feel, small town atmosphere. What would make it better? Well, keeping it small and rural. Desire to see less development, limiting development, keeping areas rural. All this, everything I see lately talks about where can we put more commercial? As though it's
Right.
inevitable.
So so if you read more into that master plan, it's like they want less, but yet they're also asking for more, but they don't want to see the more,
They only want the more down here.
They want
you
to go
know?
somewhere else.
Yeah.
No, it's a
So
very-
it
really
Well,
love
I
it.
don't know. I
Very
mean,
contradictory.
some of it, you know,
Very
talk
odd
about
document. Have you read it?
commercialization in this lakeshore
Yeah, it's an odd
residential
document.
area.
Yeah.
That seems pretty sketchy to me. That's going absolutely in the wrong direction as I would say.
I would, yeah, I would think that one would be probably a no-go for them. I would think they would not want to see that. That's just my opinion.
I'm guessing you're probably right.
100%.
Yep. Okay. So are we ready to move on next? Number 53.
Sorry.
That's all right. We're in the rural zone now. So this is, bear with me for a moment.
You know, this is good, but you read it and some things are a little scary, right? Like what can agricultural use become, Dole pineapple? Or, somebody big like that.
Won't be pineapples, I'll share.
Well, it wouldn't be pineapples, thank you. And what is forestry? And again, I looked into it and they're like, well, could be a guy coming in and picking out only hardwoods. But it could be a guy just
Yeah, well,
scraping.
you'd have to get DES approval, I think, to
Oh, you do want to
clear cut some things, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's just a little loose. The document, it's amazing somebody wrote something this big. But does it give a lot of direct? Not really. It's a little loose, I think.
Okay, yeah, so this is just allowing more stuff in the rural zone.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much open anyway.
Yep,
Yeah.
allowing it by special exception.
Mhm.
Um,
For each of these, was there broad sentiment that these are the right things and the direction to go?
Yep, so these were compiled from all the information, all the feedback that we had received. And so you kind of, and it's, I guess it's an interpretation of, this is
I'm a
all the
little bit
stuff
in
that
Mark's
people
camp,
wanted.
That I mean,
Yep.
some of this flies in the face of keeping that small town,
It does, it was very, the information that we received was conflicting.
Yep.
It conflicted each other, so it was tough to write. Let's see, so number 54. This is what we tried to do with that flexible zoning subdivision. That failed.
Mhm.
So there are some things, that we've already started to enact on. So that we said we're gonna look at potentially next year.
Strike that, yeah.
One of the things you'll find, Doug, from a couple of people that I know that are on this committee, because I was part of nominating them, actually at one point, is that there's a feeling of inevitability that progress is just gonna overwhelm us at some point, and all these things are eventually gonna turn into companies anyhow. And I think that's just the most horrible thing. As a town, we could accept that mindset.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, I don't think it's realistic either. I mean, it's not like the world is clamoring to be in Alton Bay,
Exactly.
in terms of running businesses going forward in the future, but that's where I think designating some type of commercial zone
I think that,
Makes
yeah.
has a lot of merit,
Yeah.
because
Then you can designate where they're gonna end up.
Yeah,
to
so
me,
you
if there's
control that
one thing I'm picking out of all of it, this stuff, it's about, okay, let's find an area that we really can say is minimally impacted relative
I
to
think we
trying
should.
to keep the hometown feel.
Right, and
I
it's
agree.
almost self-limiting just to the fact that, each business is creating their own septic system. By not having, a town-wide system, I think, that just that's like a self-regulation right there.
This may be a a weird one, but as far as the commercial zone goes, right? If we were to establish a commercial zone somewhere in town, commercial, light, industrial, right? Is it possible to remove the commercial part from the other zones, like where it's commercial, residential, or commercial?
Yes, so.
We could
so
remove
by
commercial
that-
from everywhere
Right,
else.
so by that, so if you were to add the commercial zone, it potentially you'd add those other zones, the Alton Bay and the Alton Village. And then you're sort of, you're divvying out what's already in the existing zones into the new zones. So you're sort
Okay.
of,
Well, what about the property
Redistricting.
holders in those zones? I mean, they just be. they just
So-
The ability to have both, dual use.
so whatever the new use they might want to come in for, they'd be under that non-conforming ordinance.
Okay.
Yep.
It's really what we're saying, but let's say the commercial zone, it's not necessarily that somebody's gonna build, but if they're going to build,
They gotta
this is
do
where
it.
you gotta go.
It's where you gotta go.
Right,
So we're,
yep,
that part, we are protecting the
Right.
rural feel of the town.
instead of smack dab
And
in
it
the
has to be a
middle
setback and
of
it
a
can't be right on
neighborhood.
the highway and,
Yep. Yeah,
Plan for it ahead of time.
yes. Master plan.
Because I think it was Scott at one point said Irving was looking to put some corporate offices downtown here, whatever that means in
Right.
terms of corporate offices, but.
right.
You can buy
Yep.
Bob's hardware store.
Yeah.
Put 'em in there.
I think that's something, in my opinion, is very important to be, I was unaware that we didn't have, I don't know why I didn't think of it, but as far as a designated commercial zone like that, that's light industrial, I think that's, to me anyway, I don't know how you gentlemen feel and ladies, but that's pretty important to me.
Yep.
100%.
Okay, so moving
'Cause,
along.
I mean, you certainly want to have some way to improve the tax base in terms of bringing commercial enterprise in if you can. And to do that would be beneficial to have an area that you can say that, this is where you want to court.
It also
business today.
saves this, it also saves that. you know what I
Right,
mean?
it saves
Exactly,
that
so
quality
it
of that.
saves that quality of
Alton
driving
Vil-
through
the
town.
Alton Village feel,
Right, yeah, okay, as
And
long
the-
as we're
and
all
the
on the same
bay,
page, that's
you know?
pretty important to me for
Mhm.
this.
Yep. So number 55 is similar to 54. It just has the same concept of allowing more than one single family home on a lot with some flexibility. 56 was increasing front setbacks in rural zones on town roads and state highways. And then to reduce frontage requirements for residential lots with shared driveways on town roads.
It is interesting that there's one set of setbacks for the whole town.
Right, it's
Mhm.
25 feet.
Right, I just, there's,
How about-
usually it's by zone, or there's. a
But
few
like
that
on
are
the state
different.
highways, isn't it, it's 200 feet in, isn't it, or something like that? Like on Route 11, pretty sure it is.
I think they have a 50-foot right of way, which ends up being
My
about
property, they
15
have
feet.
200 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly.
Okay. Let's see. This one's, just, kind of reviewing the existing ordinances that we have in place, to, let's see, what was this? Just to allow more more uses in the rural zone. Allow multifamily dwellings as a special exception in the residential zone. That's multifamily. Multifamily currently is not allowed in the residential zone.
What's the definition of multifamily again?
3 or more.
Yeah, 3 or more units, yep.
So hypothetically, a 20-unit apartment building?
Yep, anything that's 3 or more.
But then your height limit is gonna
I guess.
It's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
just
yeah,
put a-
depends on how you
put a
build it.
damper on that
Yeah.
right there. You only gotta have
Some of
35
these
feet
things just
tall.
seem to fly in the face of the,
Yeah.
what the master plan was thinking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
It's a little practice, right? It's not-
Yeah, at least to me it is.
Yeah. Yes,
Four-story
yeah.
building that's less than 35 feet tall.
The top's a cupola.
Um,
Top floor's a cupola.
So we're just gonna move right along to number 59.
Certainly you can get 3 stories, right?
Right.
Based on-
Let's see. Consider density bonuses for housing developments with smaller homes. That we kind of incorporated in, that was a little bit of the flexible zoning subdivision.
So we kind of vetoed on that tonight.
Yeah.
It's said a
Um,
lot better here though than what we said earlier. It's worded a little nicer.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Uh,
the question for me was what does density bonus mean? Or, what's the bonus? gonna
Yeah.
be?
Yeah, it was within that flexible zoning subdivision. There's a section in there that talks about the
We got a better
density.
defined density.
bonuses.
We got a better
Yeah.
defined density.
Or at least
Yeah.
start with a
Yeah.
definition. Yeah.
Number 60, we can cross that off because we did implement the short-term rental ordinance and definition and regulations.
Congratulations.
Uh, Let's see, 61 meters,
That's kind of like an aspirational statement, but
so I think that's really, I don't know if it's so much really the planning board or as much as it being the planning department to be able to have, some more outreach.
oh, okay, so this goes back to what you were talking about at the last planning. board
Yeah,
meeting.
so I think
Okay.
that's, that would kind of directly correlate with that, I think. Major zoning changes are developed. Right, so say for instance, next year, if you guys want to entertain the flexible zoning subdivision again, maybe we have some workshops for the public.
I mean,
We
ultimately,
invite,
the process is about.
we put out invitations to developers,
but
things like
ultimate-
that.
Okay, all right, from that context, because
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, it's the voters that are gonna decide on. it.
Absolutely, but if it's something big like that, maybe we didn't do enough to get the word out there.
Right,
Like
to
we had
promote
said,
it.
Yeah.
or there was misconceptions on things, but if we had,
Do like an
special
RFP.
workshops or, something, I don't know, entertaining for people to come and want to learn. So, we should probably do some more of that.
That's just adding to your workload.
It's
Being
constant.
facetious.
When are you gonna
Um,
calm
yep.
the traffic in the bay?
Yeah,
Will in a month.
I like that though.
so continue to improve aesthetics. So traffic calming in the Bay and Alton Village, didn't the police department receive funding for those like pedestrian lights?
Those
I
were
think-
discussed last night
Yeah,
and I actually spoke about it today. So that's.
yeah, so,
And where
so
would it be?
that's,
They're gonna be, I believe, we wanna get the one in the Bay done and I believe the one in town here. I believe
Yeah,
we're
I
trying to
think-
push for those right
I
away.
think right over where the crosswalks are.
Yes. And down
Crosswalk,
in the Bay and then
crosswalk.
right here
Yeah.
in town.
Okay,
Yep. So that's actually done.
so I mean, do we need to we can strike that, right?
I think so.
It's very surprising to me as a new resident in the town, how crazy busy Route 11 is. And it's the only way to get through to Guilford is to go down that bay and around that little corner.
That corner. Yeah, I mean, it's,
It's just.
Yeah.
having to go to that post office, I mean, if you're parked on the other side, it can be sketchy, huh?
Right.
Let's see. So this is in reference to, subdivision, incorporating, enhanced vegetated front buffers in subdivision site plan regs. So that's actually not even a ZAC thing.
That was
That's a
part of that.
planning board thing, really.
I like the word enhanced.
Yep. And number 65 is, I kind of already have that in the memo to kind of review the zoning ordinances. This also includes site plans to just kind of ensure that they foster growth. And I know the town is currently working on the hazard mitigation plan. So I know that that's in the works.
So this theme about creativity, creating small businesses, like seems to resonate throughout this document.
Yes, it does.
You know, question is how do you go about really doing that? No matter how you write the ordinances and everything, ultimately it's gonna come up to business people to decide whether or not they're gonna position businesses here in Alton or not.
Right. You're right, because you can't control the people coming in and what types of businesses
So
they
it's
want to
very
do. You can't-
aspirational without having
Yeah.
the substance behind how you make it really.
Yep,
If I see.
yep. Right. Which is why it's not the legal document to look at when you're making decisions
Yeah, absolutely.
on applications, you know?
Unless somehow the town becomes more focused on truly establishing a commercial zone and then talking about how you get incentives to really put enterprise here.
Right. Right.
Is the tax rate different in different zones?
Not that I'm aware of.
Will the state help in any way in that context?
As far as what goes. I'm sorry.
Tax, tax rate considerations or even incentives to, court business to come? I mean, many areas, will, reduce taxes to enhance, small businesses to come.
It's, yeah,
Or,
right. it's potential.
medium-sized businesses and the like, but, usually that's got to start with some real focus
So the commercial.
vision about, how you really want that to happen for the town.
Right, you'd want to include, the assessing department and, the selectmen to be able to,
So, so it comes back
Yeah.
to create the commercial zone and then find out to the extent, resources, monies or whatever can be available to help bring, small to mid-sized businesses to the area.
As
Yep.
far as I'm concerned with everything we've gone over tonight, I think the thing that sticks in my head that would be the most important in my eyes is the
Designating that.
designating a commercial zone.
Yeah.
I don't know what your opinions are,
Right.
but that's definitely
I
Right.
really agree.
way
I think
high on my list.
Yep.
Way high.
yep. So yeah, you'd be working on the other two zones as well. You'd have to work on all three at the same time, because
But
then,
that, like you
y-
said,
y-
that's a
y-
gigantic undertaking. So
Yeah.
how much of this are we willing to push to the wayside to make sure that something like that?
I'd
gets
rather
done?
see us focus on
Or make that.
the
priority.
big picture, kind of thing, like how do you define a commercial zone and then not try to take on a myriad of, things that you just create havoc, frankly, and you don't get anything done.
right, right. I think you start with, putting out a warrant article to, get some type of consultant to do, some research and
Okay.
try,
well,
Or
try to
start
figure out
with
how
an
do,
committee.
how do you go, or there's that as well. Yeah.
Start with going into
I mean,
that.
to me, I just look at Guilford. I mean, they've got the Hannafords and they've got the Lowe's. It didn't wind up in the residential district, that's for sure.
Yeah. Right.
And that's kind of should be the roadmap for what you look at.
Mhm.
Valid point. Yeah.
But do we have any area in town that we could? That's potential for that.
There are, so in the master plan, we did sort of a
I
mock-up.
see there were some
Yeah.
locations.
Yep, yep. So that's sort of general,
What about
like a
the-
generalized area that we didn't put lines in to sort of designate exact pinpoint. Just sort of, this area could, be the village, this area could be commercial.
Because like that area, Guilford, Laconia, it kind of fits in.
Yeah.
But then you can go into Guilford and it's nice and rural, and you can go into Laconia and it's,
Hmm.
not like that, but it's kind of like that. has
That
that
didn't
little
happen
spot.
by chance,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
No, I'm sure it was
Yeah.
planned.
Oh, yeah.
Hope it was.
Yep, right.
Well, in all reality,
Mhm.
if you think about it, those areas were set on a main highway, right?
Yeah.
Right? We have two of those.
Yep.
So it's a matter
We
of
got
time
those.
before something like that, we should really, like I said, we should really designate a specific zone for stuff like that.
Right, right.
What
We
does
want to
it-
You
get
want
it
the Home
ahead of the
Depot
game.
next to Mount Major,
know?
Huh?
right? You don't want the Home Depot next to Mount Major, huh?
Right, in all reality, no.
Right.
I mean, that's the, you know, you drive, that's the scenic route to drive to go to Guilford. You know,
Yeah.
it's the only route, obviously, to go. You go the back way 140, but
The
the
reality
way
is
everybody
that's
goes.
not precluded in some.
I,
Mm.
and in my opinion, I think it's something we should be, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So over the next year, it can, so I think we should start tackling it somehow. So throughout this year, I can start trying to get some sort of game plan together on, you know, who would be involved and what does that look like? How do we do this?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So that wouldn't be this committee? Right, this committee's not to.
So what I would do is kind of get you guys some information so we can discuss on, you know, what's what and,
How to go about it and who
you know,
to
yeah.
contact
So at least, right.
I think we would need a consultant. I think it's kind of above
Yeah.
our pay grade.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
or the Lakes Region Planning
Oh, they-
Commission.
Oh, yeah, that's where I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, we keep going back to that a
I mean,
lot
that's
tonight.
The best $10,000 you
Because
can.
we got
Really,
a
that's
big issue with
important.
Sewage and.
Yeah,
Because
Yeah.
Guilford and these other towns are already part of it.
correct.
Yes.
I'm sure
So-
Meredith,
Oh, yeah.
probably, yeah.
Because I
Marlboro,
believe
guess,
we're
yeah.
the only town that's not.
So I guess
No
high on the
entry.
priorities list are obviously is very
Yeah.
important in the restructure of the zones.
Yep.
And the non-conforming section of the ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, yeah.
For sure.
We need that. Yes.
Yeah, all right, so for next meeting, I'll have, the typical format like we usually see.
I can get definitions.
I'll reach out to, Tara Bamford and see if she's available for that. Could you guys do a motion for that to and direct me to reach out to Tara Bamford and see if
Make a
she's
motion
available?
that we allow Jessica to reach out to Tara Bamford on all necessary situations. Is that good enough?
Yep, zoning amendments, yep.
No, zoning.
A second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. To the extent you can spend $1,600.
Not to exceed $1,600.
Right.
$1,610. $1,610.
Yeah,
That could be a 20.
yeah, I checked it with.
Yeah.
with
In
finance.
today's day and age, it could be.
Put out a kitty, I'll put some money in it for you.
I was wondering.
Right,
why
seriously,
they were
a
like
real
that.
estate
They
donations.
used to plow Woodlands. That was my road when I worked for the highway. And I always wondered, I'm like, why are all these people that own this own across the way? I'm like, what? How do they do that?
Right.
That makes sense.
Did you guys have anything to bring to the table? Was there anything
Any
that you
public
might want to
input?
add? That would be number 13. Yep.
Go for it, my
Hit
friend.
his arms.
Anything that we need to say regarding contacting the regional planning commission and seeing what they have to offer, or is that just part of our?
I think
research
that,
and-
yeah, I think that would be fine to just, I
Collect
don't think that would
information.
need like a specific,
You make a phone call and,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I have a
I can
contact
be,
person.
I can be
so-
your direct contact for that, cause I mean, we bring that right to the selectmen. If
Yep.
it's this, I mean, I didn't realize we should be part of something like that. It's kind of important,
Mm.
especially considering all the changes that are coming in.
Mhm. Yep.
You have input, Mr. Shea?
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. I wonder, this Lakes Region, Regional Planning, organization, it would seem we'd want to have them come in and maybe to a joint board group, make a presentation about what they do and what they can do, because we're thinking they might help us with a lot of stuff, but in actual fact, we don't know
Yep.
what their structure is. When I first came to Alton 5 years ago, there was a lot of concern that they would take over your town and tell you how everything was going to be done. That doesn't seem to be very true, but it was the justification for not engaging them.
Mhm.
Is that something that would warrant a workshop? Would that be a selectmen, planning, zoning?
Yeah, something
Workshop.
along that line. You couldn't ask them to come and make a presentation to every board individually, but
Right,
To
so
a
the
group, you
two,
could.
like the two departments, I think that would benefit the most is highway and planning. You know, and planning department includes zoning.
Mhm.
So those are like the two biggest departments. So do we want to discuss this at a planning board meeting?
I'll bring it up at planning board meeting.
And then maybe if you can discuss it at a selectmen's meeting, if they're even if they're even interested in entertaining.
I'm sure hearing once I discuss what we talked about in this meeting, I'm sure it's something that obviously will be considered, I would imagine.
Yeah, because I
Sure.
know we've talked
Yeah.
about it before at like planning
Was
board
was
meetings.
Alts part of this
So-
group at one point?
Before.
They
They
elected
were.
to step out or not?
I don't know.
You had said they were at some point.
We
and then they
were,
opted
yeah,
out.
we were a part of it. Yep,
And then we stepped out in 2018.
yeah, somewhere around the 17, 18-ish area. Yep,
But I mean, it certainly makes sense to do this in one presentation.
Yeah.
Mm.
Make
All
one
concerned,
presentation, a
yeah.
workshop, whatever they would call that.
Yeah.
yep. So if you could approach the selectmen with that to see if they would even
Absolutely.
like entertain listening to someone. And then we can go from there.
The second thing, that the flexible zoning proposal, I think that was doomed from the start because it's such a complex subject and so difficult to explain.
Yes.
And the knee-jerk reaction from the average resident is, you know, if it's going to increase density, if it's going to change the feel for the town, anything along that line, I don't want it. And so, but I think on the other hand, we are going to continue to see pressure from the upper levels of government to do something to make it possible for people to afford to live. And I don't know what will happen in the coming year, but I'm sure somewhere along the line, the New Hampshire legislature is going to come down and say, you got to do this. You got to have 10% that or 5% this and being ahead of the curve on that might be beneficial. But if you try another application like the flexible zoning, we've got to have a better explanation and a better sales job, if you want to call it that,
Mhm.
because I think most people just didn't know what it was. And
Right.
people don't understand something, they're
Right.
afraid of it.
And
Yeah,
that's
and-
that,
and
that's
any
that
chance-
extra
Do you
outreach.
think there's any chance that they did understand it? Just voted it down?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Oh, I'm sure there were some that studied it thoroughly and reviewed it
There were.
and thought, we don't want this.
I love
Yeah.
your thinking on this, but at some point, Mr. Shade, I mean, we should accept the voters as voting against it. And if we want to come up with a different idea,
Oh, yeah,
that's a
yeah,
different play.
yeah,
But
entirely
stating
possible.
the same model and trying to reword it and remarket it to try to push it through, seems like and I don't know you very well. It would seem like if I were doing that, it would be me forcing my agenda. I
Uh-huh.
don't think we should do that. I don't think that any of the boards in
I
town
think the
should have that
popular
right.
vote here was.
Was no.
Exactly, and it was on the basis of that many people want to live in a rural community based around the way the town is structured today, and we don't need to be advocates to force something that's against the will of the outright people here, and I hear your proactive
But the
position
second idea is a
relative
good
to
idea.
the bigger government and pressures that are there, but we don't have to be out in front of that necessarily. I mean, if that's not what the townspeople want.
Right, but yet at the same time, right, this is that conflicting, at the same time,
Yeah,
out of that master plan, there's a whole depiction of exactly what we proposed.
That's right.
With the houses, there's buffering, so you can't see it, there's a smaller type road, there's the conservation and area in the back, like it literally is in.
So I
So
like-
like they
like-
want it, but they don't.
I like Mr. Shea's idea
Yeah.
on this, which is, what's the second part of your idea, which is come up with a better mousetrap. We came up with our first mousetrap, it failed. I don't think we go back and try to remarket it, repackage it. Because they said no.
No,
But I
no,
think we come up with a
agreed,
better mousetrap,
agreed.
better answer.
And in the same regard, just looking at an overall view, I can look and say 495 people in this town said no. 400 people said yes. So,
But that, I mean,
It's-
I come back
So
to
no, it
the-
was.
Yeah.
So no, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
Take a
right,
look.
that outreach,
It's not like all
Yeah.
single.
And we can find out from like a get-go, should we continue with this or no?
right,
You know,
Or maybe somebody else will have a good idea, invite developers.
But again,
Yeah.
I think this comes back to where that
or And we
that
didn't do
Lakes
that.
Region Planning Committee would be an interesting, because they're struggling with the same issue.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And
Mr. Shade, to your point, right? So 405 people said Tom Devaney should be on the planning board. 386 said Scott should. That's pretty close. Should
Oh,
we go back-
absolutely.
Should we
Yep.
re-invite Scott back on the board?
Well, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I'm
Because
not
the
saying
town's-
because things were close that somehow you
Okay.
call it a tie. Used to do that in high school softball, but
But 90
can't do
votes out of 890 votes. It's a lot of votes.
That's
yeah, it's a
statistically
message. There's a
significant.
message there. No doubt, no doubt about it. And then the third thing I wanted to say was I look at the list of stuff. It's just staggering. I don't see how that you could do a decent job on 5% of what's proposed here.
Exactly.
And,
So it's
and
better.
since we're not
defined.
facing a crisis anywhere that I know of, I would encourage all of us to take a little bite and do a good job on it as opposed to a list of 50 things that we have no chance of succeeding on.
Right.
Wait, 2 or 3 and do 'em
8 years or at
excellent.
least
Right.
5 years there before.
Right, it's like
revisit
a,
this.
right, it's the 10-year plan.
Yeah,
So
so it's
over
not
the,
like we
over
have to
the
do
course
everything
of
next
10
year.
years,
That's
these
the
were the,
20
these were the suggested action items to address.
That's the 20 year plan. I got news for you.
Yeah, yeah, right. Right, in all reality, it's not 10, yeah. Yep,
Just the fact that we're following up on it, I think is improvement over a lot of. past
Exactly.
plans.
right,
Yeah,
right,
but what I hear, what we talked about tonight is there's strong resonance around that commercialization zone, and can we create something and envision in that direction? And let's pick something that we can really execute on and bring something of substance.
right. And part of the reason why this list is so large is because we went from a master plan that only had a land use section and vision and goals to 6 chapters. So
It's
it went,
actually a great
it went
read.
from, you know,
It's a-
sort of very basic to,
information.
we have like a fabulous document I'm very proud of that I was a part of.
Oh, yeah.
It's the first real master plan of the town, really.
And I think we need to be cautious that we don't squelch kind of the work that went on at the
Hinder
master
any of it
planning.
from-
Yep,
committee.
right,
Yeah, 'cause
right.
you
And
don't-
just because it's listed doesn't mean that the planning board like has to address that stuff. These are just things that were brought up.
It's all positive.
Yeah.
It's a positive future for all of us.
Okay.
Okay, so where are we at?
Think-
Future
I think we
meeting.
might
That
be at,
Future
yeah.
dates or meetings?
So let's see what we have here.
Sorry.
Sorry,
You got my name right.
I'm sorry, I nominated you a bunch, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't bring you guys all of these
Next,
next time.
When do we want to meet? Next, like a month from now, 3 weeks,
Monthly
3 weeks
thing?
from now? Yeah, I mean, we kind of meet every month-ish or so, depending upon, you know, kind of when
long as
we
it's
can-
not the same week as a
we can
ZB
get a
meeting.
meeting in. And we
If-
meet until roughly November is when we present things. The committee presents the, you know, the proposed amendments to the planning board, and then the planning board schedules a public hearing.
So August 21st is the third
Wednesday.
week in August. Is that too far out? Or is it the 14th? Or another one, does Wednesday work for everybody? Wednesday?
So that they don't, the
Yeah.
20th is the planning board meeting, right?
Yep.
Yes.
I
So
mean, we
you
could do
wanna
the
avoid
21st.
The weeks that
Or the
have,
28th?
No, because I've got 3 committees going right now and a board.
Yeah.
So I
First.
just, whenever they're available is when I schedule it.
do the week that has the one meeting instead of 2.
I'm not available that week. So
Do you want to do the 21st? Does that work for you?
the 21st appears to be available.
Or the
Gentlemen?
28th?
Yeah. 24.
Or you can't make the 21st, it sounds like?
I can make it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I can juxtapose some stuff.
Yeah, we can't do the 28th.
Okay.
It's my birthday.
All right, so August
21st.
It'd be
21st
39
is a
again.
Wednesday. That looks good.
Not
Inside the 21st, I'm sorry.
Yep, and do we want to go right ahead and schedule another meeting?
the September 18th would
It's
be
right
the
on it.
same kind of time frame-ish,
18th, let's see if
Frame-ish?
that's,
frame-ish.
Is that a word?
I think maybe, maybe.
Is now.
We can
it
Webster
is
it.
now, right? September 18th is free.
Does the 18th work for you, gentlemen and ladies?
It does actually.
Okay, so we can leave that as is for now, and then the next meeting, we can schedule another meeting. I'm gonna say, like tentative, because if we're gonna include Tara, we have to kind of look at what her schedule is as well.
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
So there might be a little bit of email chaining going on of, can you meet this date? Can you meet this date?
that's fine.
But you think between now and the meeting next month, we'll have a first pass at the definitions. And we'll have a first pass at the whole zoning thing, the commercial. zone.
No, not the commercial zoning. We're not doing that right now. That's for next year. So throughout the year, I'm gonna try to figure out how do we begin that process?
Okay.
That's yeah.
But I mean, the work that we talked about for these items, in section 2, was it?
Yeah.
Can you have
on the
that
memo.
ready in the next
Mhm.
month?
Yeah,
All right.
Like say with, with the commercial, if we're gonna need a warrant article. We're gonna have.
oh yeah,
Consulting.
yeah,
Definitely
that's a whole lot of
to all
warrant
that,
articles.
yeah.
Yeah, yep. Okay, I think that's good for now.
All right.
Well,
Any other business? Can I have a motion for adjournment?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
Anyone opposed?
nay.
All right.
Well done.
All right.
Guys.